Yo, JD here, and as you can see, we are back on F1 22 as always, and in today's video, we are going to be showing a race that I did at the brand new, well, I'll say new, but newly added circuit to the game, which is Portimao in Portugal, which we had on last year's game. And yeah, driving this track, don't think it has really changed at all. There's only really one change, and that is the curb in the last sector. Makes it much easier to lock up, but apart from that, there are no real changes at all. And this is my first lap that I did on the track. This is with a completely default setup, so preset free, and I just really wanted to see what these cars would actually be like driving around this circuit, since they are very understeery. And it's this curb here that's a little bit different. You can see we've had a slight lock up there, but these cars with the understeery nature, and this track, although it's quite fun to drive, for me personally, I find this one of the hardest tracks to drive, most technical, where there just seems to be no grip ever around this circuit. And on this game, since it's so hard to save the ERS and regenerate it, I think this track is going to be one of the most difficult on the game for sure. So you can see in this lobby here, everyone is running exactly the same setup, so we can't make any changes to it whatsoever. And I'm going to show you on board of this full race as usual. And yeah, this is just my first experience driving Portimao with these new F1 22 cars. So we're going to be starting last, or near the back, on the medium tyres. And as the lights go out here now, just going to leave a little bit of space to try and allow the chaos to unleash ahead of us. And yeah, let's see what we can do. One thing I noticed from this patch as well is that the tyres are absolutely ice cold at the start. If there's no formation lap, then they are, well, they kind of feel like they're a minus 200 degrees. And that's what I also want to ask, do you feel there are some differences to the handling? Because for me, reading the patch notes, which I might put up on the screen now, seems like the game was definitely a lot more understeery than it was. And one thing I've experienced with the traction is that although the traction in the low gears is easier, sometimes you can still get wheel spin in the 4th and 5th gear. And if I am being honest, the more I play on this build, the more I actually prefer the handling on the initial release of the game. But as I said in that video where we talked about the patch, it probably is more realistic, the traction being easier, which no, it definitely is. So if it's going towards more of how it should be realistically, I guess we can't complain. But part of me actually did really prefer the initial handling we had. Although traction was way too difficult, I did feel that it provided a little bit more of a skill gap and just made it a bit more satisfying, because now it's just, yeah, I think it's brought everyone a lot closer together. And before, like, race starts were actually a bit of a skill as well, being on the traction. And now maybe I would have, the perfect handling for me would have been that you had the same handling as before, but the tyres were very sensitive to overheating, so then you'd have to manage your driving even more. But now I feel like it's kind of gone in the opposite direction, where you just pretty much put your tyre pressures to minimum, and now the skill gap is much more reduced. But as always, please let me know what your thoughts are on that itself. Yeah, I would say that I definitely prefer the initial handling, although it wasn't realistic, and I understand that they do have to update it, which is fair enough. I just felt like there was a bigger skill gap and it was definitely more satisfying. But I do understand the flip side, people who are not experiencing these games and people who are on controllers and things such as that, they had a really tough time of it. But in the end, that's what you need to do. You need to put in the time in order to master the physics that you're being dealt with. But yeah, that's just my opinion, but please let me know what yours are. We're coming back to this race. We're up into P8 now, and yeah, it feels good to be driving on this track again. I do enjoy it. Took me a long time to actually feeling like I actually got to a decent level on this track. On the last game, as I said, it was one of the tracks where I kind of feel you have to drive very unorthodox and quite unnatural in order to get the lap time, and it just feels like there is never any grip on this circuit, and there is no difference in that. But this curb here, as we'll go through now, definitely promotes a lot more of locking up, and that was definitely something I was experiencing when I was driving around the circuit. And you can see the guy ahead of me has having a bit of a hard time saving his ERSO, which saved ours quite a bit. And we're going to get in the DRS zone now and going for this overtake. Should get this done pretty nicely. And now we are up into P6, and I think we are the highest medium runner. But on the previous game, actually starting on the alternate strategy, especially if you were out of position near the back, didn't help you. And you can see we're just really struggling on the traction here. So coming under attack from this Ferrari, so go give him some room on the inside, be pushed out wide just a little bit, but then go use the ERS to get back ahead. And yeah, these medium tyres are really poor around here, and I always recommend people that you should probably start the race on soft tyres if you're starting in the top 5, because that's going to allow you to get away, and overtaking people is so difficult around here anyway, especially on this game where you don't really have many opportunities to keep using the ERS over and over again. It's not a track where you can make quite a lot of progress from a lower down position. So after that mistake, go try and get back in the rhythm once again. And yeah, even when this guy has his red light flashing, you can see it's still fairly hard to get the overtake done, and we're just about going to get back on the racing line here. So now up into P6 once again, and the goal is to try and get within the DRS zone of FRT Fusion and destroy Sean, who I've raced with on a regular basis as well. So hoping that the mediums will slowly but surely start to come into their own. And yeah, just the feeling of these cars around here, we are using a stock setup as well, so we're not using a custom one, which it will definitely feel better with that, but just a lot of understeer and just a lot of lack of grip in the circuit. It feels like you can just lose the car at any point. And yeah, it's just a track that definitely takes a lot of time to get the hang of, that is for sure. But we're just trying to get within the DRS zone of this guy up ahead. And now when I upload races such as this, I don't always upload races where it's going well for me, because you will see a bit later in this one, it was a bit of a frustrating experience. And as always, I want to try and showcase a realistic view, and even the races where it doesn't go quite to plan, because I myself, looking back on this, can actually learn many things from when you make errors and doing your best to avoid them in future. So we managed to get within the DRS zone of this guy now, and you can see the guy in the lead is already going down to that horrendous turn 8 where it's really hard to get on the traction. And everyone ahead of me, I believe, is on, well, I think apart from one guy who's in P2, is on the soft tyres. So they're still performing quite well, and you can see we had quite a lot of wheel spin coming out of that corner, even though we were in 4th gear. So I'm going to try and get past this guy as quick as I can, but we are the quickest guy on track at this point. So coming through into here, just trying to keep all the minimum speed as much as possible. Keep it nice and tight to this apex. Trying to get a good exit, using a little bit of the ERS here, but it's really hard because since you're already going at such speed, it's really hard to carry that momentum. So we're using quite a lot of the overtake, and even using all of this overtake, it's going to be so hard to get it done. So he actually goes quite defensive, and what we're going to do here, we're just going to let him out of position, but then we have to kind of shift ourselves back and forth all the time, go around the outside, do get this move done, trying to get the inside for this left-hander, and now we're up into P3 in this race. And now let's see what the gap's going to be between myself and the leader FaZe Luca, who started P3 in this race, and the guy called It's Lose 95, someone I know quite well, is a pretty fast driver himself. So it'd be good to see what our pace is like compared to them, but it still looks like the softs are still firing quite nicely at this stage of the race. So we'll particularly pay attention to the guy in P2 just to see how much progress we can actually make on him, as the guy behind me now has a 6-second time penalty. So track limits are also a fairly big issue here, and yeah, I would say again that this track is definitely one of the most technical and hardest to get correct. It's it takes a lot of time to get a good pace around the circuit. I just feel it doesn't really have a particularly great flow because you're always stop and starting with the speed. Other than this little section here, you always have to slow the car down quite a lot, then get on the traction quite heavy. It's a bit of a problematic circuit, as the guy who was on the softs has now pitted, and you see the gap was about 9.8 seconds to him, and now we're actually closing in on It's Lou 95 quite quickly, and I think all the soft runners, pretty much most of them, have pitted at this stage in the race. So we're just going to keep on going as long as we can, because we want to try and maximize the soft tyres as much as possible to try and gain the advantage back. And at the moment we're actually closing in on the guy in first place at a good pace, so we're just going to look to try and keep this consistency up as much as possible. But one thing you might notice and it really becomes a big problem for me at the end of this race, is I actually had my blind open in my room because I had my air conditioning unit go out there, the funnel go out the window, and the sun as it was setting was actually starting to get more and more in my eyes. So you will see a little bit of frustration towards the end of this video because I'm literally driving with one eye open at the end of this video, which is definitely something you don't want to be doing around this circuit. But at the moment we're still making pretty good progress on the guy in the lead, so now we're 3 seconds behind him, so getting quite a bit of time. And obviously with these stock setups you can't change your tyre pressures, because I would recommend to running it to minimum as much as you can, because if they overheat you will start to get a lot of chronic understeer. See, the gap here is now 2.7 seconds, and coming through into here, just trying to carry that momentum between these two corners. You can see we're really gapping the guys behind quite nicely as well, who all actually have time penalties as well. And now coming to here, does he continue for another lap? Yes he does, so closing in pretty quickly at him. So I want to try and get as close as I can to his DRS zone, or just limit the undercut that he might potentially get on me. So coming through into here, we've got a little bit of a ghost car, and coming out of this corner, as you know, quite nicely, the guy in the lead, or the guy who was in the lead, has done a 19 8.7. So lapping a little bit quicker than us at this stage. Coming off here, trying to be nice and smooth on the power, which we are. And now we've actually closed in another almost 4/10 on the lap. And then as we come through into this turn 8, got nice and smooth on the power, and yeah, we've just done another Verstappen going through there, and that has taken away a lot of progress. I think we lost about almost up to 5 seconds, so about 4.95 seconds just from that. And that's one thing I've noticed a little bit on this build, this handling update or this little patch here, is just that it's still quite easy. The car just unexpectedly just snaps away from you at really random times. So I'm not sure what happened there. So what we're going to do here, I think we might be boxing at the end of this up, try and get a little bit of a undercut. So we're going to go into the pit and spotting the pit limiter quite nicely. Pit speed, and you can see that light is starting to get more and more in my eyes as well. And we timed the turn in quite nicely. And yeah, that's probably cost us around, I'll say, a good 5 seconds just from that little incident there. So now we're going to come out and let's see what we can do. So you can see the guy face Luca is already quite a way ahead of us. We're not going to be undercutted by anyone else behind, and the tyres are going to be very, very cold. So that's definitely a really big issue in this game, is just to get that tyre temperature going. And you can see 15.2 seconds. So if we didn't have that spin, we wouldn't really have lost anything that much on the undercut at all. So we're just trying to generate a little bit of tyre temperature back in, because the tyres are just so cold at the moment when you are coming out of the pits. Kind of feels like the hard tyre that Charles Leclerc was on when he was doing his Hungary race. And even now we're still not actually gaining time on the leader here. So the guy ahead of me, it's Lou 95, I think will be pitting at the end of this lap, and then we have 5 laps to see how much time we can actually close in on the leader. So it's 9.3 seconds to destroy Sean. So let's see how much time we can make up there. And yeah, on this circuit, it just feels like no matter what I do sometimes, just the pace is just really hard to come by. So this guy's now coming out of the pits, and he's probably got a little bit of a overcut of me, but then you will see as his tyres are going to be so cold, we're just going to gain a lot of time. So 7.1 seconds, now 6.1, and his tyres are going to be absolutely ice at this stage of the race. So going to be pushing a little bit with the ERS here, and you can see the gap is going down to under 5 seconds now. Let's see how much time we can actually make up for the rest of this as we actually do a purple first sector. So not using all of our ERS, just in case we do catch up a little bit later in the race itself. And nice and smooth on the power here. You can see again the gap is now down to 3.8 and now 8.2, so we catched over a second to the guy in second place, and I think the gap was 15.2 seconds to the leader. So we'll keep an eye on that for the end of this race, and we're going to try and get the DRS of this ghost car here. So we have a really small lockup, so not going to use any of the battery and just going to benefit from the slipstream and the DRS that we're going to get from here. And going across the line is going to be a 19.5, but we didn't really use that much DRS on that lap, as Carl does a 19.1 behind us, so it's 2.1 seconds behind, but I think he did pit around a lap or so earlier than us. And yeah, let's just see how much time we can make, as the guy in third actually has a 5 second time penalty as well. So I think he must have sped going into the pits. So everyone has a penalty around us apart from us. So I'm going to try and get within maybe 3 seconds of Destroyer Sean as well, as we've gained maybe about half a second or so on this lap alone. But it looks like he is actually starting to catch the leader, so I think he might be pushing quite hard with the ERS himself, coming completely flat out for his left-hander, making sure you try and avoid this curb on the exit, and it's just all about carrying that minimum speed possible. But yeah, please let me know as well what tracks you would actually have liked to have seen return to the game, because obviously Portimao is not on the calendar, so I think a lot of issues in the past have been due to licensing. So the fact that they can actually bring back Portimao even when it's not on the calendar, I would love it if they did Vietnam, because we only had that on the F1 2020 game, if I recall correctly. And maybe other tracks like Korea or Malaysia or Hockenheim, which we were teased, but apparently, well, it was confirmed that that was fake news. So maybe having a track like Hockenheim would be absolutely insane, instead of having China and Portimao itself. But hopefully in the future they can bring some other circuits which we haven't had for quite a few years. But as we've got maybe just over a couple laps to go in this race, so we are closing in quite quickly now on this group, and if we were 5 seconds up the road, we would be within the almost DRS zone of the guy in second place. So you can see we're closing in quite quickly and pulling away from Carl 24 behind, who is also another very, very fast driver himself. And again, I think since it's so hard to save the battery around here, you are going to see a lot of people really struggle managing their ERS issues. It's kind of brilliant here. We're just going to give it absolutely everything we can. Now he's actually got 8 seconds worth of penalties, so we are definitely going to get a podium in this race. I'm going to try and get within his DRS zone by the end of the lap, if we can. And the gap is now 6.4 seconds to the guy in second place. And yeah, we're just going to try and get within the DRS zone here and see, hopefully, maybe the leader might have 8 penalties. We're almost losing it again, and now you can see the light is well and truly blinding my eyes. So I'm literally driving with one eye at the moment, and I can tell you it was a little bit frustrating having that in my face. And we're just going to do our best to get within the DRS zone here. So it looks like his red light might be potentially flashing. So I'm not going to use anything here. You can see I'm just trying to get out of that sunlight in my eyes. And we're going to benefit from the DRS going down this straight. And remember, everyone is using the same setup as well, unless they've changed their wings in the pits. And yeah, we've only got 1 lap to go after this itself, so just going to try and save a little bit more of the ERS as we get in this next DRS zone. And the gap to the guy in second's kind of leveled out at this stage. So I think at the start of the race, where around this circuit, it's very, very similar to Imola, I would say, where it's a very low grip circuit. It's really hard to save the ERS, and it's more beneficial to be on the faster tyre when the fuel load is higher. So it's more effort to move the car around. When the fuel load kind of burns off, I think the mediums actually start to become not too bad after a few laps in the race, and the advantage of being on soft tyres is definitely not as much than it was at the start of the race. So that's definitely a piece of advice that I would always give people. But coming through into here now, you're about to see again of how hard it actually is to overtake, because since you're already going at quite a high speed. So we're going to be using the ERS here, getting the DRS zone now. It's weaving quite a bit on these straights, and what we're going to do, we're going to try and go maybe round the outside for this corner and just about staying on the track, but we actually get the move done. So fair play. He didn't run into the side of me there, so we get a little tap from him behind, but now up into P3. And yeah, face Luca, if we had another 5 seconds added on, and I was planning to maybe go an extra lap as well, I think it could have been very, very close for the race win, because we wouldn't have had to use so much ERS to bring ourselves back in contention. So up into P3, and unless this guy in second to almost make a mistake once again, so that turn 8 is becoming really difficult, and you can see now that I just literally can't even see anything on on the track, because the sunlight is just completely blinding my face at this stage here. And yeah, as we come through into these penultimate corners, this was my first experience at playing Portimao. Definitely nice to see it back, and it's good. It's always good to have a new track on the game itself. But I do stand by what I said a little bit more, that it's good to have a track, but I do wish that some other areas of the game could be focused a little bit more. And yeah, I'm having to get out of the seat and turn down my blind ASAP. You can see a little bit frustrated there as well. So thank you so much. I really hope you enjoyed this video and you're enjoying the game. Please let me know your thoughts, and I will catch you very, very soon. Peace.